Today I'm going to show you how to turn this ordinary piece of 1/4-inch plywood into a cube with no fasteners. First thing we do is figure out what our dimensions are going to be. So I'm going to cut 2 rows of sides out of this, and they're all going to be the same size. So I've got 19 inches here, and I've got 11 inches here, so maybe I'll go 10 inches. So 10 divided by 2 is 5. So if I have 2 rows of 5, I can get 2 rows of 5-inch sides. I can get 3 pieces. So that'll be a little over 15 inches. So 1, 2, 3, and we'll have about 4 inches of scrap left over. And then we're going to put all these together and make a cube out of it. So first you want to set up your saw to make a 5-inch wide cut. Move your table saw fence over to 5 inches. And you want to get this just right on the money. And we're there. And we set up our vacuum system to suck from the right tube. And we're sucking. So there we have 2 5-inch wide strips. We're going to break this down into 6 pieces, 5 by 5. I'm going to use my miter guide for this. And I think I'm going to adjust that. So the miter guide is set for 0. We don't want any angle on that. We want nice straight cuts. It looks like the edge of this plywood, the edges are a little crooked. So I'm going to clean those up. Before I run them through. Cleaning up the edge first. Now we have a nice straight edge. there we have all the pieces cut. So there's some little rough edges on these. I'm going to clean them up with my sanding pads here. In this case, I'm just going to use some 120 grit. Just want to knock the extra stuff off. Doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't even have to be really good. We're going to run these through the saw again. You'll see this in a minute. Real simple process. But you don't want these extra little things hanging in there to push your edge of your board away from the fence, make it crooked. You want to keep all these cuts straight. Okay, so now I have 6 pieces, and they're all exactly the same width and height. So the next thing I'm going to do is turn this blade to a 45-degree angle. So you can see the blade's at a 45-degree angle now. And we're going to take it down a bit so that the top of the blade is just going to clear the top of the wood. You don't need it any more than that. And so the next thing we're going to do is move this fence over by the thickness of one of these pieces. And it's sold as 1/4-inch plywood, but it measures out at more like 3/16. So we're going to move this thing over 3/16 before we make any more cuts. And you can see when you slide the wood, it knocks into the blade. So that's exactly what we need. I'm going to get rid of the fence because we don't need that. And you want to put the good side up. Just make sure all of them have the good side up, because the back side has that tear out on it. We're not going to mess with that. So start the vacuum again. When you run the piece through, I guess I need to go a tiny bit more. Try this again. Okay, there's a nice edge on that one. So you see you end up with a piece with a bevel on each edge. What I usually do when I make these is I batch them out. I'll do like 5 or 6 at a time. You know, one at a time is okay, but if you're going to put a bunch of these together, you might as well cut as many as you can, because you'll see in the glue up process how you can save time by gluing multiple cubes together. So we're just doing one for now. That's 3. And that's the last one. So now we'll go over to the assembly table. And start putting one of these together. So you'll have a little bit of extra little crumblies here and there. That's not too important. You can get them off with your fingers. They're not too bad. So again, you want to put the good side up, and you're going to look around at the pieces and see which ones you want to put together. Now, since you cut them out of a strip, 2 strips in this case, it might make sense to put them back the way they came. And then we've got, so we could have cut these all out of one long strip and they would have matched, but this is the scrap I had laying around just to show you how this is done. Okay, so you get these all pressed together like that. Then you get your blue masking tape. 3/4 stuff works just fine. And I like to tape across the joint like this, because then I can go all the way down, keeping them nice and flat as I'm taping them together. just like that, and leave some hanging over. Leave a couple inches for yourself. And that'll help you close it up into a square when we're ready to glue it up. So on these small boxes, I'm just going to use 2 strips of tape. And then on the top and the bottom, I go like this. Probably add some more tape later, but that'll help us get it all put together without any issues. Okay, now we flip this over. Keep those 2 tabs of tape looking up. Don't want them getting folded under and sawdust all over them or anything like that. Come get the glue and a brush. And I don't like to use a whole lot of glue. It just has to be wet, and it'll make it all stick together. It'll be just fine. Just give me a little stripe of glue in there, because you're going to spread it around with this brush here in a second. Get it all the way to the ends, because you want it to be a solid glue joint from one end to the other. And then you want to make sure you get the ends that aren't taped up to anything. Get them both, because, well, it's just better that way. This needs a little more. If you're real careful, you're not going to have a whole bunch of squeeze out inside, but you're not going to see the inside of these, so that doesn't really matter. But if you're making a box with a lid or something like that, then you would want it to be clean on the inside. So you just start by folding it over 1 piece at a time, and you roll it together just like that, and you pull these 2 pieces of tape up. So now you have this little square, and we're going to glue up a top or a bottom, whatever this is. Now I can just spread that with my finger. There's no sense in getting the brush all up in this stuff. And a little bit in there. It'll stick. When you put this together, you want to kind of squeeze the corners of the box to match the corners of this square piece that you're gluing to it, and then just fold the tape down. Okay, so that's a nice tight fit. Got a very limited squeeze out. Okay, so we push that all together. Butter up another one here. Set that on there. Again, you'll be just squeezing everything together, making all the sides and corners line up, and that'll get rid of any gaps. You cut your pieces nice and square. like to rub my thumb over the tape just to make it nice and tight on those joints. I'm going to put a little more tape on because I see a little gap. Don't want any gaps. If you don't like the way it looks when you're putting it together, just put some more tape on it. It'll pull together any gaps. It'll look good when you're done. And you're going to break these edges over too with your sander, so they won't be so sharp, so they won't catch on things and splinter. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to let it dry for a while, and then I'll come back to it, pull the tape off, and probably put some splines in it, dress it up a little bit. So here we are the next day. Glue has dried overnight. We want to just gently peel the tape off. Don't want to rip the edges. These corners sometimes can be a little bit delicate. But as you peel the tape off, you just don't want to rip anything off right here on the corner. And what helps is this plywood that I used already had a coating of lacquer on it, I believe it was. This was just a piece of scrap from the shop, so some kind of coating was already on it. Kind of helps. Actually, it helps a lot. You see those, you can get some nice crisp edges. Now you can start to see that cube emerge. This is just glue, no fasteners. Didn't use any fancy tools, no square, nothing like that. These are really easy to do. And you could do a lot of things with these. You know, if you wanted to make a pair of dice, all you need is some white paint and some black paint after you're done breaking the edges, which I'm going to do here in a minute. So there's a wooden cube made out of plywood. So I got these sanding pad holders, sanding disc holders. I don't know what you want to call them, but they're really handy. They don't over sand because you control how much you sand. So all I'm going to do is hit each corner about 5 times back and forth. just look it over, make sure I have hit all the corners. And now I've got just some little fuzzies hanging off here and there. So just lightly go over each face and gently focus on any rough edges. Or any glue squeeze outs. Okay, so that looks and feels pretty good. There's one little spot right there. Okay, so there's a cube. And you can see I have the grain following, at least on these 3 panels, since they were cut from the same strip, excuse me. But you can make this go all the way around. You can follow the grain all the way around. And if you got really fancy, you do it out of a plain piece of hardwood, not plywood. And there's a trick you can do to make the grain follow all the way around and tie back in, and it'll just look like one solid piece all the way around. But I'm not going to get that fancy. So my next step is going to be to put some splines in it. I'll show you what that looks like with a bigger one here. So here's a cube I put together earlier with some splines, just to show you how that looks. This one's just a rough prototype. And this one I just made out of some pine boards that I had laying around, some leftovers. So that's what we're going to do with this one. Not that you need the splines. This is plenty strong the way it is. But I just like the look of the splines. So that's going to happen next. So now I'm going to show you how to cut some splines into your nice little cube. And, you know, I kind of like it just the way it is, but I think the splines are a nice little touch, like I showed you on the big cube. So I'm going to show you how to make one of these in a later video. This is a sled that I've put together for cutting the spline slots into this cube. And I'm going to cut them about 1.25 inches in from every corner. So we'll have a little slot about 1.25 inches in all the way around this thing. And then I've made these little triangle pieces that I'm going to shove in there and glue them into place. When those slots are cut, they'll just go in just like that with a point facing out. And then we'll get them flush with the box. We'll sand them smooth and then finish it off with some poly or something like that. So I'll show you how to make these later too. But I just wanted to include this part in the video so you can just get another idea on something you can do with this. So with that, let's get started. And I've got this, like I said, set up so it's 1.25 inches to the center of the blade from the face of this. I'll put the cube in here and hold it tight up against that as I run it through the saw and rotate it to cut a slot in. I'll cut 2 slots into every edge. Now I've cut those little triangle pieces in a way that they're going to fit these slots just right. They'll slide right in there, and there's hardly anything sticking out, so it's not going to be much work to cut that off once it's glued in place. So that looks pretty good. You can even stop right there. You know, you could put these slots in all the way around, just leave the top and bottom the way they are. But I'm going to go ahead and finish it all up. Put slots on every edge. Okay, so we've got slots all the way around. The next step is to glue all the triangle pieces in there. You want to make sure you protect your work surface because you're going to get globs of glue everywhere, and you don't want that because you'll run your other pieces as you slide pieces over your work surface. You'll run into globs of glue, or as you're trying to glue something up, a piece will be raised up and won't line up right, and it'll be offset. So you don't want that. So always protect your work table. So these are just real easy. And these don't have to be perfect. You'll see that some of mine are not perfect. They're bigger. They'll stick out a little bit more. But we're going to end up cutting that stuff off later, so it doesn't really matter. It's just nice not to waste a bunch of material or have a bunch sticking out that you don't necessarily have to cut off. And if you'll notice, I'm taking the flat edge of these little triangles and shoving them in first, like so. I think this is Wenge. It's a pretty expensive piece of wood. I paid 12 bucks for a very small chunk of this. And so it was even a shame to lose the material that I lost when I had to make blade kerf thickness slots or slats out of this stuff. But it's for a purpose, and that purpose is this. So here's one of the bigger ones. You'll see this one's going to stick out farther than the rest. Not a big deal. And you can see it's got a little bit more sticking out. Not a problem. And there's another one, just like that. Another big one. You don't want to put too much glue on these, just enough to be wet, because the more glue you have dripping down the side of this thing, the more cleanup you have to do later. It's just not necessary. Wood glue is really, really strong. Way stronger than I ever thought growing up. Every time my parents would glue a chair together in the kitchen that one of us kids had broke, it wouldn't be very long before that would come undone again. And I just think they didn't have good contact. You know, you have to make some contact between the two pieces of wood that you're gluing. And the glue will fill in some gaps, but it's very, very strong. You can see a couple of those globs of glue like I was talking about. You don't want that on your work surface. So I think I'm going to get a bench cookie for this. It'll make it a lot easier to get that other side done without pushing the splines out that I've already put in. This way I get them all done at the same time. And just let this dry. And then later on I'll show you how we're going to cut them off. Cut off that excess that's sticking out. And if you've done this right, you won't need anything to hold these in. They're going to be really close to the size of the blade, the thickness of the blade that you cut the slots with. So you're not going to worry about taping them up or anything. Very simple, very easy to do. And don't eat this stuff. It's not kindergarten paste. It's a tight one. Sorry about that fan noise above here. It's a warm summer day in the garage and the exhaust fan is just kicking out that extra warm air. Alright, so there we are. That's all glued up. Just going to check everything, make sure they're all in there nice and snug. And it looks like they are. So I'm going to leave it on that bench cookie and just let it sit until all that glue cures. Then we'll come back and cut those off, make them flush, finish it, sand it again, and see what we have in the finish shelf over there. Make it all nice and pretty. Now if you have a multi-tool like this one, you can get some of those bigger ones cut down to size, and I'd recommend using the biggest, widest flat surface you can use, and hold it flat on the cube so it doesn't tear up the plywood. You're going to get a little bit of scarring, but you're going to sand this off again anyway, so it's not going to be that bad. Plywood, so that's pretty good. Hold it nice and flat. There's another one. This one's already got a little bit of scarring here from messing around with it before. Maybe that's just glue, but here we go. Just hold it nice and flat. So now that I've got this all sanded and smooth on every side, all those splines cut down, I'm going to stain it with this golden pecan stain that I had laying around. Nothing special about it. Haven't used it before, but here we go. Now, I used to have some staining pads, but can't find them. So I will go with the paper towel method. I like that color. So there you have it. That's how you make a wooden cube. You can get all the joints perfect, get it looking good. Dress it up however you want. You don't have to use the splines. You don't have to finish it off this way. You can do whatever you want. You can paint it, you can stain it, you can just leave it like it was. But hopefully you learned something, and if you did, please like and subscribe to my videos so you can see what I'm doing in the future. I'm always working on something here in my shop, and hopefully I'll be doing some things that you'll find useful. Thanks, and have a great day.